Hello everyone, and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for June 29th, 2020. This is the time of the week that we get together to talk about all things CircuitPython. I'm Katney, and I am sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python that runs on tiny computers called microcontrollers. This meeting is held every week, typically on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. It is held on Discord, the Adafruit Discord server, which you can join at adafru.it/discord. We record this meeting. We record both the CircuitPython channel text chat and the CircuitPython channel audio, the audio chat as well. And it is released as a video on YouTube and is made available as a podcast on most podcast services. We are around all week on the CircuitPython channel and on the Adafruit Discord. CircuitPython development is sponsored by Adafruit. Please support them by purchasing hardware from adafruit.com. This meeting is held in 5 parts. The first part is community news, which is a look at what's going on with CircuitPython and Python on hardware in the community. The second part is the state of CircuitPython, libraries, and Blinka, which is a statistical overview of the entire project by the numbers to give us an idea where we're at outside of what it is we are doing with the project. The next section is Hug Reports. Hug Reports is an opportunity to call people out for doing something good. It is held as a round robin, where the person who is running the section will start and then go down the list alphabetically and loop back around, giving everyone who wants to an opportunity to give their list of hug reports. If you are text only, please let us know, and you can put notes in. There's a notes document, I should mention that. There's a notes document that goes along with this meeting that will have timestamps. So you can scroll through that, find what it is you want to listen to, and only listen to the parts you want to if that's how you would like to do it. If you are text only, please note it in the document. If you are lurking, please note it in the document as well. Or let us know in the CircuitPython text chat. If you're text only and there are notes, I will read them off. If you are listening to this later and you would like to participate in the meeting but you are not unable to attend, you can always add notes to the document and I will also read those off as we go. The next section is status updates, which is an opportunity to take a couple minutes, let us know what you've been doing since the last meeting and what you will be doing until the next meeting. This is also held as a round robin, where the person running it will start and we'll go through alphabetically. And again, if there are notes from folks who are not able to attend or are text only, those will be read off in order. And the final section is In the Weeds, which is an opportunity for more long-form discussions. These are things that can come out of status updates, or as we have right now, you can add you can add your In the Weeds topic ahead of time. If there's something you already know is going to be a longer form discussion, feel free to add that in. And please, if you have any In the Weeds topics that either came out of status updates or you have them now, add them as soon as possible so that we aren't waiting around at the end to see whether anybody has any topics. There are already a couple in there. Please add your name along with your topics so that we can turn it over to you when that time comes. And that is how this meeting goes. So with that, I can get all the way back to the top of the document here. I will take a timestamp and we will get started on community news. So first up is a focus on the Adafruit Clue board. The Adafruit Clue contains a powerful NRF52840 microcontroller, a suite of sensors, and a color display on a board the size of a microbit. And here's a trio of articles from makers in using the Clue board. First up is Les takes a look at the Clue and provides comparisons to the microbit. He demonstrates how to code the board in Arduino and CircuitPython, and a review of microbit add-ons that work with the Clue. You can use Bluetooth to talk between a microbit and a Clue board in MakeCode and CircuitPython respectively. And finally, using Adafruit Clue and a Wi-Fi Featherwing bridged using a Pimoroni pin between. The project uploads sensor status to Adafruit IO. Next up is Python T, which is a podcast hosted, or video podcast, I believe, hosted by Nina Zakharenko, who talks this week with Thea Flowers. Thea has used CircuitPython in a number of projects, including modular synthesizer modules sold by Winterbloom, and that's available on Twitch. The Open Source Hardware Association posted a resolution to redefine SPI pin names, stating that the words we use have an impact. It is time to remove the words which describe a morally repugnant relationship, master and slave, from our technical vocabulary. And they talk a little more in their post about standards and interfaces that use this terminology, and the actual SPI interface using Mozy, Miso, and Slave Select, and how that's unacceptable, and they are going to be making changes. In news from around the web, Tiny Town is a palm-sized light-emitting sculpture which is rechargeable and portable. A CircuitPython controller randomly and continually fades in individual RGB LEDs through a range of warm colors. The piece can operate plugged into a USB outlet or untethered for more than 5 hours per recharge. And another project was the International Space Station Tracker. Tracks the ISS current location and trajectory using a Raspberry Pi, ePaper display, and ProtoStacks enclosure and Python. All of this is taken from the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter. If you have any Python on hardware related projects that you would like to share, please submit it to the newsletter. You can post it on Twitter with the hashtag CircuitPython, or you can submit a PR to the GitHub repo. You can also contact Anne and let her know, and we'll get those things added. We're always looking for more stuff to add to the newsletter. And that is community news. Next up is the state of CircuitPython and the libraries and Blinka. This is a statistical overview of the entire project. It gives us an opportunity to look at things by the numbers, separate from what it is we actually are up to, and just gives us a chance to see where things are at. So overall, we had 38 pull requests merged by 19 authors, which is fantastic. CJC is new. Jay Gillick I don't recognize. The Electric Mayhem I also don't recognize, and PTS 93 are names that strike me as folks new to the project. So thank you so much for new contributors. It's always great to see more people added, and thank you to everyone who's continuing to contribute. And we had 13 reviewers, which is also excellent. D. Harada has been working with us for a bit, but is a bit new to reviewing, and R. Hooper is new to reviewing as well, so thank you to them both. The more reviewers we have, the more authors we can support. We had 27 closed issues by 18 people, and 13 opened by 13 people. So overall, we're looking towards releasing CircuitPython 6x. The move from 5.4 beta 1 to 6x comes out of the I2C renaming requiring a major version bump. Expect to see a 6x release this week. There is much activity on the libraries, including another issue sweep, a ton of PRs with fixes and features. Blinka is seeing continued display support improvement, and all of the activity across the entire project is great to see and continues to increase. So that's been very excellent to see. So with that, I will turn it over to Scott to talk about the core.
Awesome. Thank you, Kattni. So on the core side, we had 9 pull requests merged from 7 different authors. Jay Gillick is one of the newer authors for us as well, along with PTS 93. So thank you to those new authors. We had 3 reviewers. Thank you again to reviewers. And again, we'd also love to see more reviewers on the core side as well. In fact, I think PTS 93 and I are actually chatting later today, hopefully, and getting them ramped up, doing some more core contributions, which would be awesome. So looking forward to that. And if people do need help on the core, please reach out. I'm always happy to take some time and get people ramped up. So that offer is a standing offer for anybody who wants to take me up on it. I can't spend like weeks on it, but I can certainly give you an hour of my time to get things going. We have 17 open pull requests. I think it's actually more like 19 at this point. But most of those are hot off the press and new, so that's awesome. And we're, I think, generally getting through them. So let's keep that up. Issues wise, we had 4 closed issues by 3 people and 4 open by 4 people for a net of 0 for 312 total open issues. Again, we are kind of starting to grow this. A lot of those are categorized as long-term. In fact, 249 of them are long-term. So long-term is kind of a like, yeah, it would be great to get that at some point, but it's not not an immediate thing. And we have -1 issues not assigned to milestones, so we must be good in that regard as well. And that's it. I think we have a link here for core download stats, but I don't think we haven't hooked that up yet either. So that's it for the core.
Thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is the libraries. We had 29 pull requests merged by 13 authors and 12 reviewers, which is amazing. Thank you again to CJC and the Electric Mayhem. In terms of author names, I believe are new. And thank you to everybody who's been reviewing. Like I said, the more reviewers we have, the more authors we can support, and this is amazing to see this number so close together. We had, out of our 29 pull requests, the oldest one was 40 days, and a significant number of them were all within 0 or 1 days, so that's also great. We had 19 issues closed by 14 people and 9 open by 9 people, so we are down to 174 open issues. And we currently have 34 open pull requests. All of this information and more is available on circuitpython.org/contributing. If you are looking to contribute, this is a great place to start. You will see all the open PRs, all of the open issues, and a list of library infrastructure issues. The issues are sortable by label, and we've been working towards making sure that we label all of our issues with something, bug enhancement, good first issue, that sort of thing. And if you are new to things, search for good first issue and find something that appeals to you. And if you need some assistance with that, we have a guide on contributing to CircuitPython with Git and GitHub, and we are also always available to help. There was one new library this week, the PCF 8591 library, and a number of updated libraries that I will not read off. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to talk about Blinka.
Hello. So Blinka is our CircuitPython library compatibility layer for Raspberry Pi and other single board computers. And this week we had 0 pull requests merged by 0 authors and 0 reviewers. There are currently 2 open pull requests. And there were 4 closed issues by 2 people and 0 open by 0 people, which is good. There are currently 25 open issues, and there were 1,665 PyPI downloads in the last week. We are currently at 52 supported boards. And that's it.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
And that is the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. Next up is Hug Reports, and for Hug Reports, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
Hello. As Kattni said earlier, Hug Reports is the time that we take to call somebody else in the community out for doing good things, because right now and every day we need more focus on positivity and building each other up. This is done as a round robin, so I will start, then we'll go down the list to the bottom in alphabetical order, and back to the top until everybody who would like to has had a chance to talk. If you're marked as lurking in the notes document, I will skip over you. And if you're marked as text only, I'll read the notes that you've provided. So once I find my spot here, I want to thank Kattni for letting me help out on the weekly meeting, and of course, working towards me doing more on that. I want to thank Dan for some code reviews and Scott for some code reviews and a very helpful conversation near the end of last week that kind of got me unstuck and over the hump on a pull request. And I want to thank Kattni for some conversations now and then over the last couple weeks, and for doing the weekly Python recap video. Thanks to Hierophect for a very productive conversation about pin allocation on STM. And thanks to, I think, first-time contributor WT Yumura on GitHub, who contributed some translations. I think the language was Brazilian Portuguese. I've already forgotten. And thanks to Jerry, this weekend I kind of had a stream of consciousness that I was doing on an issue he filed about CMake versions on GitHub. And yeah, so I don't know. Thanks for putting up with me. And with that, I will hand it to you, Jerry.
No problem. Thanks. Let's see. Well, I was going to thank you, Jeff, for your help with that all that confusion. You helped me understand a little bit about what it was trying to do, and we got it working. And then just a thanks to the community moderators for being there. It's been some interesting times out there. And a group hug to everybody. Thanks for being there.
Thanks, Jerry. And now it is Jay Marcelino. I'm sure I butchered that name, but we're happy to have you here.
Oh, hello. Hi. First time here, that's true. I'm here in the UK. Progress in CircuitPython over the last 2 years. I want to contribute now. So it's really good to join one who made this possible.
Thanks. And with that, I will hand it to you, Kattni.
All right, thanks. Let's see. First up, thanks to you, Jeff, for continuing to work towards running this meeting. To Foamy Guy for always being available to test PRs and putting in new features and a ton of fixes to libraries. To Summersoft for putting together a PR with the process to move the CircuitPython libraries from master branch to main branch. Also to Summersoft for sorting out a way to get the PyPI download stats going again. A belated hug to Sean and Harris for having me on the Hello Blink Show podcast. And a hug report to community moderators for continuing to handle the influx of moderation issues on Discord and for handling a recent cross-platform moderation issue quite well. And that's what I've got.
Thank you, Kattni. What I notice is everybody who thanks the community moderators is one of them, but I think that's because we see what it is that we are doing, and we have to kind of build each other up. So let's see. KJW is up next and is text only. So they say thanks to Foamy Guy for quickly fixing the max glyphs issue in Adafruit display text. Mark Gambler is lurking, so that brings us to Maker Melissa. Hi.
Hello. So I wanted to give a hug report to Foamy Guy for reviewing a couple of my PRs. Hug report to Kattni for getting the downloads and pinout sections done at the 1.3-inch TFT Bonnet guide. And I'll give a group hug while I'm at it.
Thank you. So we've got a couple of lurkers, and after that comes... I guess Mr. Certainly is lurking? Yes. After that comes Summersoft.
Hello. So hug to Tanu, Jeff, and JW Cooper and Kattni for some PR reviews over the past week. Hug to Foamy Guy for giving Rosie Pie and Business CI some exercise by setting up a node. I'm kind of spoiling their status. The questions and the experience that they're having is excellent feedback. The project really needs. And just a group hug beyond that.
Thank you. What's up, Stargirl? It's good to see you in the meeting today.
Yeah, for the first time in weeks, I didn't have a conflict, so it's nice to be here. a huge hug to the people in help with projects, especially Electronic Hearing and Matt Bodger for helping me debug a tricky issue with my oscillator design. During this process, I realized I need a new oscilloscope, so I finally bit the bullet and bought an oscilloscope. So a double hug for giving me the push to actually get a decent oscilloscope.
Having good
also,
tools is the best.
It really is. And I've been using a Bitscope Micro, and I am so ready to throw it in the trash. It's just the worst. Yeah, and also a hug to everyone who was involved with the Ashra Spy terminology post. It's so great to see that, and it's so well thought out. I'm really, really happy to see that happen. And that's it.
Thank you. So SYEE is lurking, so it's Scott's turn.
Hello. Okay, so first, a non-CircuitPython Hug report for Ask Patrick W, Fuge, Aaron XO, and Felice for helping with the electioncal.us stuff. If elections in the US are interesting to you, check it out. We have a new design for our social images, and we support about 15 states at this point, which is awesome. And it worked, yay! So that's non-CircuitPython stuff. Also, hug reports to Jeff for a good discussion about the background task work. Hug report to Jerry N. and Jeff Epler for improving the CMake requirement for the ESP32S2 build. And welcome to Dahan Zamin. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. And who was asking about STM32F103 support. And thanks to Higher Effect for replying with a detailed issue comment about the steps that they need to take to add the 103 support. It seems to me that the Chinese kind of maker community has started to wake up to CircuitPython, so we should embrace them like we embrace everybody else. So welcome to those folks, and thanks again, Higher Effect, for leading the charge on welcoming them.
Woohoo! Looping back around to the top, Anecdata is lurking, but I have some notes from them. A hug report to Dan H for help with my BLE noob learning curve, and Mad Bodger for helping me think straight about Raspberry Pi system constraints and data structures, and also a group hug. And that brings us to you, Brent.
Hello. Hug report to Scott for the CircuitPython design guide, specifically for reusing the unified sensor API that most Adafruit Arduino libraries use, and then to Dan and Scott and whoever was involved with the BLE API and BLE sensor service design protocol, the protocol design. It's actually really well thought out, and I've enjoyed reading like the documentation on it as well. And then a group hug to everybody. Oh yeah, that's true.
Thanks. And what do you have for us this week, Carter?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay, I was chipmunky a little earlier, so glad it's working.
No, it's fine now.
Cool. Hug to Brent for working on some mini MQT issues that I need for something I'm kind of working on, which I'll mention later in status. Belated shout out to Katney for that Hello Blink talk, which I finally listened to this weekend, which was just yet another excellent just community, goodness of community discussion. That was really good to hear. Everyone should go listen to that. And also a shout out to Lady Ada for her Ask Me Anything she did with that Hack Club. Another excellent video. Just really nice to see that younger crowd, their enthusiasm, but also the way they're looking at Adafruit as more than something that's just a source for blinky LEDs. They're appreciating what they're kind of standing for and what they're doing, which is just really great to see. That's what I got.
Thank you. Charles, let's see. I got some things out of alphabetical order because I'm awful at that. CJ Shea, are you lurking? I guess you left the chat. C. Grover is text only. I have notes that say hug report to Jepler for the excellent Microlab learning guide, a wonderful roadmap for this week's steep learning curve journey. I can't wait to hear more about that. Charles is lurking, so that brings us to Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hello. So I'd like to thank John G, Anecdata in Discord, and also KMB15 in GitHub, who have been trying out various BLE libraries and finding issues that are either old or have to do with new changes. And that's great that we can't test everything comprehensively all the time. So I fixed those things already, or they're in process. And then continuing thanks to Kevin Walters, who continues to try a whole bunch of things and find all kinds of border cases and not so border cases of things that don't quite work. And they gives us a lot of food for thought and things to work on. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Dave P is lurking, and David Glaude has left us some notes. A hug report to everyone, if the moderators permit that. A hug report to Group Hug is just fine. Thank you very much. To Jaren and Foamy Guy, that they are bootstrapping me into compiling CircuitPython on a Pi 4. To Dan H and Tenerialk, I'm sure I read that wrong, in helping to continue investigate being a dual BLE HID device, and Stargirl for open sourcing the Featherwing Hostess. Deshapu is lurking, and that brings us to Foamy Guy.
Right, hello. This week, I would like to give a hug report to Summersoft for he started making those changes to the docs. I think I mentioned that last week, to get the out-of-date notification to be a little bit more visible and in your face. So that looks great. And then also to Summersoft for helping walk me through how to get set up on Rosy Pi and PhysicCI. A hug report to Jerry for sending me the pre-built version of the GCC for Raspberry Pi. That saved me a bunch of time having to build that this morning. To KJW for finding and reporting an issue with the display text library over the weekend, as well as, like Dan mentioned, they seem to be very good at kind of poking around the edges and finding all sorts of issues everywhere. So thank you there. And then hug report as well to Kattni for reviewing the PyBadger PR from last week. And then lastly for me this week, I had a group hug, just thanks to everyone. I know there's probably specific ones of you out there that I have forgotten to mention, but definitely everyone who hangs out around the Discord. And it's really feeling lately like I've come along. I've learned a lot about the platform and the build tools and everything, and I could not have done it without the help from everybody here. So really appreciate everyone.
Thank you. Sorry about not giving you the chance to speak, David, but we will be happy to come back to you in status updates. And now I believe Hierophect is next.
Hi, just a group hug this week. And it's not anything specific. I want to just say that I am thankful that it is raining out here, because things were getting pretty crispy. So, so anyway.
All right, group hug to the sky. Jacob T is lurking, so I think that covers everybody. And we can wrap up hug reports and move on to status updates. Status updates is also conducted in a round-robin fashion. Let us know what you have been up to in the recent past, such as over the last week, and what you'd hope to accomplish today. This is mostly about CircuitPython, but if you've got any projects that are likely to be of interest to the community, please feel free to mention them too. We're not too strict about it. So anyway, I will go first. We'll go around the list to the bottom in alphabetical order, then resume at the top. So right now, I was just explaining what status updates are. Got to put a note in to remember to do that. And last week, I made some real progress on a task that had been vexing me for weeks, and got SDIO working on a SAM E54 dev kit. And when we decided to slightly decrease the scope of the pull request to improve SD card functionality, that got to the ready to review stage and was a really nice way to wrap up last week. This week, I'm going to be working on any changes that are requested on that pull request. And I'm going to be working on some stuff related to background tasks. When Scott put in the lower power stuff for the NRF boards, it broke or it decreased performance in some of the background tasks. And this is all about getting that performance back and making some code improvements that we have wanted to do, but we had deferred until now. And that'll keep me busy probably for at least a week. And with that, I will pass it to Jerry.
There's
Are you there, Jerry? There, Terry?
Yeah, it just took a while to find the right buttons here.
All right.
And figure out where I am. I'm so used to being near the end here, and so I'm not used to coming after you. There it is. Okay, so not a whole lot to report this week. I had been working on this, trying to squeeze the RFM9X library in to the Feather M0 board, but that's kind of blocked until this issue with Pulse IO gets resolved. So I'll pick that up when that happens. And then did, as mentioned, found and resolved a little minor issue building CircuitPython on the ESP32S2 for the Raspberry Pis. So I kind of like to be able to build on there just as sort of a backup system, and just because it's fun to do. So it's nice, and it is working again. And then I've been spending the last hour, probably more than an hour, in the help with CircuitPython, working on this really strange issue somebody's been having with trying to hook up a second SD card reader, in this case an Adalogger, to a Feather M0 M4 that has a TFT Featherwing on it. And if the SD card is inserted, if there is an SD card present in the Featherwing, even though it's not even being used, then you can't access the SD card on the Adalogger. That's really bizarre. If you pull the card out, it works. So I'm really baffled and struggling with it, and I'm trying to come up with a good, clear example so I can post an issue to somewhere when I figure out where to post it. But it's been fun, but it's been confusing. So if you want to take a look at Help with CircuitPython and see if you can understand what's going on, be my guest. Otherwise, maybe I'll bring it up. I'll have it in the weeds as a possible discussion to see if anybody has any clues. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry. So Jay Marcelino, you are up next.
Oh, hello again. Yes, so I'm new here, like I said before, Rack Wireless. This is a company specializing, so including Adafruit sells their gateways, for example. Working on one product, which is the Rack 5010 RF52840 board with the modem. So yeah, that's exactly on the shot now. Working, I'm just finishing up some pins, and I will send that. And coming up next will be a bit more interesting with Jewel, which is an NRF 52832 with LoRa. For the Rack 5010, I'm hoping to use the Phono if that works well. This is CATM, and for the 46 series initially, and then maybe work something in a better shape, I guess. Yeah, so happy to be here, and with a few weeks.
Thanks. Please don't hesitate to ask us any questions, although we do not always know the answers, that's for sure. Next up is Kattni.
All right, so I had a jam-packed week last week, it turns out.
Oh my, you do have a lot of words here.
I started adding the ISM 330 DHCX plus LAS 3MDL Featherwing to the ST Compo board guide. The libraries associated with the ISM chip needed a fix, so I'm waiting on that to finish updating it. The overview pinouts and downloads pages are all updated, but the Arduino and CircuitPython pages are not. I also added a note to the guide about the Featherwing. Both of the ST Combo Featherwings, SCL and SDA, are swapped on the silk. The pins are fine, but the silk is swapped. So there's a note added to that, and if that comes up anywhere while you are trying to support someone with those Featherwings, know that the board is fine, it's the silk that's a problem. I updated the NeoPixel animator code in the Circuit Playground Bluefruit NeoPixel animation and color remote control guide to match the updated LED animation API. When we completely redid the API for the LED animation library, I had forgotten that there actually was a library, or was some code that was using the original API in a guide. Dan is the one that found that through someone on Discord. So the only thing that needed to be changed was the imports. However, once that was fixed, a bunch of bugs in the LED animation library popped up. So those all got fixed. And then I was able to submit the update. And then I updated the guide to match the code change. Verified with Melissa that we're on the right track for getting all appropriate CircuitPython libraries on PyPI. The rest of the display libs that aren't there will be tested and a determination made. And once tested successfully, Melissa will notify me and I will get them put on PyPI. Added the STEMMA QT version of the BNO055 breakout to the BNO055 guide. The pins are the same, they're a slightly different order because the board's a little bit smaller. There's new fritzing diagrams to use with that and all the updates on the downloads page and so on. Started a guide for the 74HC595, which is an IO expander. We have had this chip for ever and never did a guide for it. So the guide will be wiring it up to basically wiring up SPI to 8 LEDs and some code for that. Required some assistance with getting the wiring correct on that, but once that was fixed, wrote up code with that does a chase effect and some blinking, and a lot of miscellaneous following up on GitHub issues, etc. So this week I need to finish up the 74HC595 guide. Hopefully the final updates for the ST combo board guide will be good to go, so I can finish that as well. I'm going to hopefully be moving the CircuitPython library default branch from master to main. There's a draft PR in for that. We just need to verify that that's good to go and run it with the proper credentials. And then there's a couple libraries that I believe we may have to do manually, but I'm not sure. But I want to get that done. So there's that. I need to get the prerequisites done for us to get our PyPI download stats going again. Where we used to get them, rate limited it, and we had so many that we were running into the rate limit very quickly, which is fair. So we're going to be rolling our own check, and that requires some accounts. And then after that, it's a mystery. We'll find out later. That's where I'm at.
Ooh, spooky. So KJW is lurking, and that brings us to
Hi.
Hey.
I think you got cut off there. Let's see. Last week I worked on porting a good chunk of the PyPortal library over to Blinka. I optimized some of the Blinka display IO code to use native pillow types and functions, so that's using full image functions instead of the pixel by pixel functions. I fixed several libraries so they install correctly via PyPI, and I worked with Kathleen to write the 1.3-inch TFT bond with joystick guide. This week I will be working on speeding up display I/O for Blinka some more by implementing dirty rectangle tracking. I'll look into getting the Blinka PyPortal library, working with Adafruit I/O, and review some pending display-related PRs. Other things I've been working on, I published my open sign Python library on GitHub last week, and it allows easy animations of RGB matrix signs driven by Raspberry Pi boards, and it's available on GitHub and PyPI. And I upgraded my PC case to by installing some RGB LED fans to make some cool animations. And that's it.
Cool, thank you. That sign sure shows really well. I liked it.
Thanks. I've been working on making a video about it for my YouTube channel, so that should be out soon.
Nice. All right, we have a couple of lurkers. So according to my notes, next, Summersoft.
Hello again. So last week for Adabot, as Kattni has mentioned, I worked out how to transition away from PyPIstats.org for getting library download stats. Basically, we just directly use the Google BigQuery that the Python Packaging Authority supplies with information. And then I also put in the draft PR with a script that will automate moving all the library repositories from master branch to main branch. And then for the course documentation, I implemented the CSS stuff that Foamy Guy mentioned. When you go to an outdated version of the documentation, Read the Docs will generate a message notifying you that you're looking at outdated documentation, but we kind of needed to, or we wanted to change it up a little bit. So I put in a PR for all the version branches from 2x to main. And then on the core and CircuitPython.org combined, I implemented supplying a built-in module support for each board on the CircuitPython.org board pages. It basically just kind of duplicates the information in the core docs for the module support matrix. So it'll just show what modules are available for each board per release. And that's about it. This week, I have no idea what I'm doing this week. So
that's very honest. Thank you, Summersoft, and that brings us back around to Stargirl.
Hey, folks. So last week I received 2,700 patch cables, which is a lot of patch cables. Here's a picture. And I was finally able to ship all of Winterbloom's pre-orders. So I opened in April, and I finally shipped all my orders, which is great. I worked a bit on my new oscillator design. It's making noise, which is wonderful, and it's making the right kinds of noises, which is even better. And this week and beyond, I'm going to get ready to move across the country. So probably won't be working on too many hardware projects for the next little while, but I am excited to get settled in to my new place and start working again.
Glad to hear it. And that brings us to Scott again.
Hello. For me, I got the ESP32S2 bus IO PR out on Friday, and I asked Jeff to review it for me. And we'll follow up on it this week. I know the CI broke, so I need to look at it today, but it shouldn't be a huge change. So if you want to start the review, that'd be awesome. Next up, I'm moving on to doing the networking side of the ESP. Jeff's going to look at the background stuff, so I can go straight to networking. I want to remove some of the existing native networking APIs, disable them for 6.0 because I want to have kind of a unified network API going forwards. And after I do that, then I will make a 6.0 beta or alpha, depending on whether I think our APIs are kind of changed in the way that we want to change them for 6. If we want some wiggle room, then I'll do it as an alpha. But if we're pretty certain, I'll do it as a beta. And then I'm going to start on the ESP32S2 Wi-Fi. So start poking at the IDF provided stuff there. So also helping Timonsku get ramped up on CircuitPython Core, who also goes by PTS93. So that's part of my week. And I'll be streaming on Friday, I believe, as well.
Nice. That loops us back up to the top of the alphabet. Anecdata is lurking. So, Brent, you are on the hot seat.
The hot seat. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Let's see. Last week I fixed a bug within mini MQTT. Protocol bugs take a while to fix, and I ended up fixing 2 smaller bugs while I was at it. And Carter can work on his guide. This week I'm moving, so I'm not going to have much to report.
Moving. I can't even handle the idea of moving. Carter, what's up?
Sure. One thing I just added that I remembered, I fixed a bug in the ADS1X15 ADC library. It kind of comes up a bit. People are using this in continuous mode and trying to read as fast as possible. And they always kind of run into some glitches, and someone ran into yet another one. So I was able to tweak it to get it to work again. But I would imagine people are going to run into some other issues there. But we'll deal with it when it happens. And then in terms of guides or projects, as Brent mentioned, I'm working on something, let's kind of call it a whiteboard, quote unquote, where you basically just send bitmaps back and forth through MQTT. So you can kind of share it and edit it and send it back and forth with edits. And since he's got that fix in place, I need to get back to that and start working on that again. And then another fun one I'm working on, and I got a little fun photo I can throw in here, is a clue-based altimeter. And this is something I've also seen a lot in the forums where people are kind of confused at how pressure-based altimeters work. They see a function in a library that says altitude, and they're expecting a ton of black magic. You don't realize you got to kind of calibrate it and how often you have to calibrate it, etc. So a guide will come out of this once I get this kind of worked out. And this was just a fun field test of a first iteration of the altimeter. And that's what I got.
Oh, I'm envious of being at that place in your photograph. But yeah, that's not close enough that I could go there. All right, C. Grover is up next, and they are text only, but I have notes. Working heads down on a combined hardware-software scheme to automatically detect cables connected to Eurorack module jacks, useful for switching between the internal static preset or an external control signal. The current project has 7 10-volt analog input jacks, 1 digital-ish gate input jack, and 1 analog output jack. Using an Itsy Bitsy M4 Express to simultaneously inject a single polling pulse into all input signals, then noting the change in the input measurement. The current code version is working reliably, but needs experimenting with Microlab today to see if that will help. Charles Burniford is lurking. Dan had to take a phone call. Kattni, do you think I should read Dan's notes?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, it does say text only even. All right. So Dan fixed several smaller BLE issues, which are being found as we churn the libraries and more people are using them. And he started on yet another implementation of BLE.io to support the HCI BLE protocol standard used by ESP32 and other modules, and also used by USB dongles. Primary goal is to support BLE on airlift-enabled boards. Did some refactoring to enable a second BLE.io implementation in the CircuitPython tree, added BLE.io.adapter API to specify the pins needed to talk to the HCI adapter, made an empty BLE.io implementation which compiles, and I'm now working on first communication with the adapter. Dave P. is lurking, so that brings us to you, David, if you'd like to try your mic.
Yeah. So I've been working on controlling 2 computer and shaking the mouse so that the computer don't fall asleep. But yeah, that was not attempted before, I think, with CircuitPython, and with the help of Dan and somebody else asking question, I managed to have some working code. There is a glitch, there is a small bug, but it keeps the computer awake. I've been playing a lot with the Featherwing Enviro Plus from Pimoroni. And well, this week I've been trying to make it work with the STM32 feather that they don't support. They don't support because they've got that very strange physical feather pins which map the physical location of the pin on the feather to the name that they use. And also they use time that is not available on the STM32. So once again, with help from Discord, I replaced that with time monotonic. And yeah, now it's almost working with the STM32. I did try today, in the last hour, to replicate that clue that was talking to the airlift featherwing. And right now I only get error message because maybe my wiring is wrong. And in a not 100% CircuitPython topic, I got interested into the Color Maximite 2, which is like a retro console that you boot, plug on VGA, and you can write games in BASIC. Well, not only games. And it ran with a STM32 something,
So, well, if that's going to be supported in CircuitPython, that would be great. Then I can use the same board for two things. Yeah, maybe I should provide a link for that, but that's it. The link for that gaming stuff.
Thank you. Let's see. Foamy Guy, you are up next.
All right. Thank you. So this past weekend, I worked on fixing a couple issues in the display text library. One was around the max glyphs having an off by one error, and another one late yesterday was around the anchored position not working correctly with scaled labels. Over the last week and over the weekend as well, I got a lot of work done on my JSON layout system. I got that published as well, so I'll drop a link on the chat here in just a moment after my turn is over. Definitely interested in getting feedback on that. So if layouts and display IO is of interest to anybody, take a look at that and feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. Along with that, through this past week, I was kind of trying to brainstorm some ideas of ways to test display IO libraries. So kind of pie in the sky, a dream state would be something that could sort of automatically download a modified library and run, all of the examples or some subset of the examples, and then hopefully have like a camera pointed at the screen and take a photo of each example, and then kind of combine it all together in a nice, easy to read, easy to glance at and see if anything looks totally messed up based on the changes that happened. So if anyone has thoughts or ideas on that front as well, feel free to reach out. That's something that's on my mind. And then lastly, this week was the other thing I did was diving into the Rosy Pi and PhysicCI. So I've learned a ton so far. This is my first time using Ubuntu on a Raspberry Pi, so kind of started from there and have learned lots more. I have the setup script running actually on the Pi in the background because I ran out of space on my first SD card, so got more to do on that tonight, and that's been a really, really neat, interesting project to dig into. So again, thanks to Summersoft on that. But that's all I got for this week.
Cool. Hierophect, you are up.
Hey. Okay, so this past week I worked on a couple of various fixes and reviews, but my big project was getting started on the timer allocator for the STM32, which will allow us to have more modules that use timers enabled on the STM32. It'll support them across some new chips, so the access lines on the F4, so some of these really cheap chips, the F401, the F411, will now have access to things like Pulse IO and Rotary IO once that's enabled, which they didn't before. So that's been kind of my big project for this past week, and I'll be wrapping up at the beginning of this week. As part of that, I was reviewing some of the timer differences between the F4, F7, H7, some of these other little bits and pieces that need cleaning up. So that'll be in there as well. I also, one of my kind of off-work projects last week, which took up a chunk of time, was viewing apartments in Boston. So thankfully, the physical part of that is over, and while I've still got some tasks associated with it, shouldn't be interrupting work until I move in. So that's nice. This week, I'm going to be working on, like I said, wrapping up the timer allocator. I'm going to hopefully spend a little bit more time on RGB matrix, figure out why that was glitching out on the F4. It's possible, sounds like that for the particular model of RGB matrix I've been using, it might be too fast or have wrong clock settings. So I'm going to check out the frequency and just take a hard look with the Salier and see what's going on with that. And then, as Scott mentioned, we had a recent issue which was expressing some interest in the F1 series on the STM32. The F1s are especially popular in China because they are super cheap. They've kind of been around for a long time. They're not very high capability in comparison to the other CircuitPython boards. They're about comparable. So the lower quality ones, or lower what they call the high value line, is kind of in line with the SAMD 21, but there's some higher level F1s that have stuff that starts to be comparable to the SAMD 51 and some of our other kind of lower flash chips. So I'm not going to be directly working on that, but I'm just kind of keeping tabs on it. I've provided some instructions for how people could contribute to that effort. And I agree with Scott that if that could get going, it could be really pretty cool because there's quite a lot of projects that depend on the F1 and use things like the very popular Blue Pill, which is a dev board that is literally $2 with free shipping for something that is orders of magnitude more powerful than an Arduino. Or at least the old Arduino Unos. So yeah, excited to see that going, and I'll continue to assist with that where I can. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Jacob is lurking, so that brings us to the end of status updates. The next section is In the Weeds, the spot for a long-form discussion of items related to CircuitPython. If you have a topic you'd like to discuss, please add it to the document. Actually, please add it to the document an hour ago. But anyway, we are going to start by handing the baton to Jerry, who has a couple of items.
Okay, let's see, try to make these quick. So I don't know if anyone has a clue as to where to even look for this. I'm trying to decide even where to post the issue. But so the scenario is I've got a Feather M4 Express with a 2.4-inch TFT feather wing and an ADA logger. If you put everything together and just sort of blindly say, I want to talk, I don't want to use the SD card on the TFT feather wing. I just want to use the SD card on the ADA logger. So I hook everything up and I got my jumpers all set right. And I go to mount the card. And if I do not insert an SD card in the Featherwing card reader, it'll work fine. If I insert a card in the Featherwing card reader and not using it, not even initializing it, not even talking to it, then I can't read. I get a timeout error trying to read the ADA logger SD card. However, if I then, let's see, what's the order now? If I then do that and then put the card back in the SD, in the ADA logger, or if I put the card back in, I can then, as long as I don't power cycle, I can read it just fine. So the first time through, you have to read from it first with no card in the Featherwing. Then after that, it's okay. And also, I can read from both cards once I get this set up and working. But it's just something, after power cycle, something's weird. So does this sound like an SD card driver issue? I don't see how it can be because the SD card driver doesn't even know the TFT's there.
When you insert a card, does it pull, like, does it try to, is there some sort of electronic thing happening when you insert a card, like it's pulling on a pin or something, just like saying, hey, I'm here?
Looking at the schematics, looking at the TFT Featherwing, there is a pin that goes to card detect, which doesn't go anywhere. It just goes to a pad, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So I don't see how it's doing anything, but obviously I'm missing something. So yeah, so if anyone has it, there's been a long discussion of this back in Help with CircuitPython. I'm trying to figure out where to put. I think I'll start off posting an issue to the SD card driver just because I don't know where to post it.
Are you sure you're properly taking care of the chip select for all of the peripherals that are sharing the SPI bus?
I'm not sure of anything, but I think so because I can access everything independently. I can run the TFT display, and I can access the SD card on the ADA logger. I can access the SD card on the Featherwing, and once I get things working, I can do all of them at the same time. But the order in which you do them is very important and very confusing.
Is there one program you've been using for all of these cases?
Well, I'm trying to write a clear, concise test script, and it's not been easy to get one that I think I have one now that can reproduce the error pretty cleanly. Well, with a bit of juggling, but so I will put that out there and see. But does anyone have a suggestion? You know, do you think the SD card driver repo is the best place to post this?
So what I know about SD cards, and I was trying to Google up a reference that explains this. When they power on, they're not actually in quote-unquote SPI mode. They're in this other mode called SDIO. And until you perform the initialization that puts them in SPI mode, they are not exactly behaving fully like a SPI peripheral. So I'm not actually sure how you can initialize two of them, because this source that I wish I could find says the first thing you have to do before, say, talking to a TFT display is initialize the SD card into SPI mode. If you've got two of them, then how can you initialize each of them first? I don't know.
Okay, that's interesting because, you know, like I said, order matters, and doing one without the other one plugged. Yeah, what I thought I would do is actually try and get the TFT out of the loop and maybe put, you know, two breakout boards and see if I can reproduce the same problem there. So before posting this, I thought I'd try and simplify it even more. But that might be better to do. But that's a good point, that maybe it is just something funky about trying to do two of them. But like I said, I can get them both working.
But you have to unplug one of the cards.
I have to unplug one of the cards, but not you know, just no card in place. So physically having a card inserted, it seems to change things. So
I know card detect is usually a mechanical thing.
Yeah.
So like the card detect line will just run to a spot on the SD card holder, and there's like a spring that gets moved when the card's in there. So
right. So it doesn't seem like and on the breakout boards or on the Adalogger, I don't think it's even connected. But on the TFT, it does go to a pad on the board, but it shouldn't be bothering anything. But maybe I wonder if Jeff's. I don't know. I don't know if the board is behaving differently with a card inserted versus not in terms of its initial power on behavior. Maybe something funky. So I'll keep playing with it. But if anybody
SD cards are funky.
Yeah, they are. So it's a real puzzler. And like I said, once I get things working, then I can actually read from both cards, you know, at the same time, or not at the same time, but you know, on the same program. So it's weird. All right. I don't want to take a lot.
Yeah, I'm tempted to tell you to try what Scott is suggesting as well. You would look in the SD card driver and figure out what is this command that switches the card over to SPI mode. You would turn on both of the chip select lines, send that out. They both receive it. They might or might not drive the MISO line in return, but it'll probably be fine. I mean, you won't burn up your board today doing that. And then maybe once they're both in SPI mode, you can initialize the peripherals with their real drivers in any order you want.
Okay, well, that makes me think that maybe the right place at least to post this for starters too is the SD card driver. So I will we'll go there and then feel free to comment on it as it comes along. It may be tomorrow before I can get stuff out there, but it's a puzzle. Thanks. All right. The other thing I was going to bring up, but we probably shouldn't spend time on it now. Dan's aware of this, and I think he's probably back. Is that I've been increasingly having this problem of really clobbering my Linux box by disconnecting, CircuitPython boards. I thought it was, I was having a lot of trouble because most recently I was playing with the ESP32S2. But I've done it twice today with a Feather M4, and all I do is power cycle. I turn the board off, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but it just totally locks up the Linux box. I have to power cycle the Linux box. So,
I'm among the people who that has happened to. For me, it happens the most when I'm debugging them with my J-Link, but everybody seems to get it in a slightly different way, which is weird.
What is
So-
it? OS are you using?
I'm running Ubuntu 2004.
So I have installed I have installed the right thing to get the kernel crash dumps when this happens, and I've reported this bug.
Okay, so you just think it's a kernel bug, and we should.
It's a kernel bug in the USB. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's some kind of kernel bug.
Okay,
I mean,
that's
the kernel is crashing. The kernel
my-
is getting like it's a storage allocation error of some kind.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I'm not.
It sounds like the when it goes to mount the card, it's not getting it quite correctly, and there is a issue already out there for the SD the SD card driver for Raspberry Pi OS, which is running the most current kernel. So,
Okay, this case has nothing to do with Raspberry Pis, but okay.
Yeah, this is not that. I think this is different. This is a USB issue.
Okay.
So I reported it, and I had a brief exchange with somebody about it, and I posted a link in the notes here about that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's in work, and it's just I just wanted to in case I know it's getting to. I may be moving back to my Mac for a lot of work for a while.
Yeah, I mean, if you could also post similar crash dumps to this bug, but yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. I'm not alone.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to just. It's just. And it does seem to manifest in several. Like the board dumps are not always. The back traces are not always the same.
Yeah, I'm not seeing even a mention of it in the DMESG log. I mean, it doesn't even seem to. It dies before it gets to writing.
Oh yeah, no, it's a really bad crash.
Yeah, it's quick. When I was fighting it running Ubuntu on a Pi, it's either a kernel driver or it has to do with UDEV. That was the closest I could get to figuring out anything in my particular.
But I had to install KDump in order to get the debugging information.
Okay, thanks.
Great. All right. Thank you, Jerry, and everybody who has also encountered that problem. I think it's not just one person alone. I'm going to hand it off to Brent.
Hello. Yeah, so my In the Weeds is about the way that we handle sensor properties in CircuitPython. So we bring in the list of sensor properties from the Unified Sensor Library for Arduino, and that does a really good job with encapsulating the types of data that we're sending for each sensor event. So for sending temperature, it will send in degrees Celsius. So that's really good, but should we also be adding other properties from this library to the design guide, such as like the sensor's name or the sensor's resolution or the minimum and maximum values that the sensor could report in SI units to CircuitPython sensor libraries?
I think the question is why.
It'd mainly be useful for like display or like IoT things. So like if you were creating a gauge icon, it would know the maximum minimum of that, or it would know like what's acceptable data coming out of the sensor. It would kind of do some type of verification. But I guess that could be handled on like the server side as well.
Yeah, I think it feels separate to me from this list at least. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a standard way of discovering the stuff, but I'm not sure that like they may not be like proper properties necessarily.
All right.
It's more like an introspection sort of thing where you want to say like, oh, I have some temperature sensor. Tell me about it. That sort of thing.
Right. All right, cool.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it'd be better implemented in like Sensor Lab or something. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah, perhaps. I think yeah, it's interesting to think about, and yeah, I think let's work on this in the frame of the IoT stuff you're doing, because you had a very good point about the gauges and stuff like that. So it could be like we take the board approach where we just document every sensor's properties, or we take the Python approach of just like, no, we'll just tell you the things you need to know and you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Yeah, interesting idea. Nothing conclusive.
No. When is it ever conclusive? All right. Dan, I see your wall of text here. Are you ready?
Yeah, I could be ready, but I don't have to talk about these. So I tried to put them in priority order.
All right. Well, you have the floor.
Kind of informative. So, yeah. So one thing, I'll just try to explain them very briefly, and there are some things to be aware of. So because we're not going to have a 5.4 release, it appears, there were some things that we were going to remove in 6, but we can't remove them now unless we change the library code to, basically I'm renaming some properties in the BLEIO library. And if I don't, I was going to I added a name, and I was added a new name for something I was going to take away an old. And there's a couple of examples of that. But adding the new name happened after the 5.3. So there's no stable release that's going to have this new name until 6. So I will just, either I have to change 4 or 5 libraries to handle both names, or we just defer removing the old name until 7. Since it's in underscore LAI, most people, but it means the libraries can get out of sync. So this is maybe kind of a Scott question, and it kind of brings up again the idea of, do we have bundles that are for a particular version of CircuitPython?
Right, where the code is different.
Yeah, where the code is different for the 5.0 release, the 5.x release. And
like, why do we need that? Why can't the library just detect what version it's running on?
It can. I just have to make a pull. I have to add that code, and then eventually I can remove it. Okay. Right. So I could do it that way. Yes, it's not such a big deal. The way I was hoping to do it was to do it in the process of a 5x release, but I can still do it that way.
It's fine with me if you want to leave it for 6 and just remove it in 7 if you want to be cautious. But I'm also, like, it's in an underscore BLEIO, so like nobody else should be depending on that. So it's just up to the libraries. And
yeah, there's one other case that is in byte. There's like there's an argument that we're going to take out of a much more fundamental lower level thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think we can just do that. I think that's okay. Yeah. All right. So then the next thing is just to be aware, and whether it's an issue, that because we now have BLEIO available. Yeah. Go ahead.
Maybe then there was an I2C something that was going to be removed in 6.0.
Right.
It was depreciated already, and I don't know what it is, but I remember that.
Yeah, that one is fine. That's not a problem. These new ones were in process in 5. Right. It was read then write, or something like read from then write into, or something, and that we're going to take away. Or I can't remember. So that one is okay. So then the next item is just to be aware that because all the BLE libraries now can run or a lot of them can run on under Blinka. And so that means that there's a BLEIO, the Blinka BLEIO that Sphinx can use to provide cross-references for and things like that. But what I've had to do in order to make that work is to bump the build version of Python to 3.7 in the GitHub Actions files. And I've also had to change which mock imports you have. And this is not really a problem. It's just something to be aware of, and whether anybody thinks it's an issue that we are running library checks under 3.7 instead of 3.6.
I don't think it's a problem. I think the problem is that there are now differing actions files, meaning any kind of patches we do are going to fail. So I'm wondering if we should just upgrade it across the board.
Well, I think you could do it on an as needed basis. I mean, and also there's like all these things are, it's like not even a version of the library usually. I mean, it's changing only because I fixed a bug, but now I can't build the docs anymore. Like the docs were built and they were fine, and since then you've added Blinka BLEIO, and now the docs don't build anymore.
I mean, upgrading the CI doesn't trigger needing a release on everything. It's actually pretty seamless.
Okay, so I'll talk to you about doing that in a bulk way then.
Okay, because that's my major concern, is just that like future patches will be a problem if we have differing CI files.
Right. So maybe I'll change, and maybe I'll propose a PR for the cookie cutter.
Okay.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a problem. The only time I can think of that you're going to run into problems with bumping the version of 3.7, like I did with the CP board file in tools, is the changing of any or async into a keyword and things like that. I mean, other than that, there really aren't any huge changes in 3.7 from 3.6.
Yeah, there was, in this case I had to bump it because I have BLEIO, the Blinka BLEIO library type annotations in it, and put in from future import
right
dunder annotation dunder, because that doesn't exist in 3.6. So
I just mean, across the landscape, if people were able to get away with using keywords like async and await.
Right.
All right.
Which you can't do now.
Right.
Do we want to do like 3.8?
I think we could do 3.8.
Like I like the idea of us trying to keep up with Python in this way, simply because it's a forcing function, and for us to not do things that are incompatible with like more modern versions of CPython.
Agree entirely.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And I was stuck on 3.7 for Windows Blinka BLEIO, but that's not true. So maybe I'll try changing a couple of these to 3.8 and see that if it works properly, then I'll get back to you, Kattni, and we can skip ahead to 3.8. Okay. Or maybe in 3.9 is not 3.9 is still an alpha.
Accurate.
Right? Yeah. Okay. All right. I could stop now. I could go on to the other two things. So, so I just want to the next item is that this whole business of like building bundles and things changing, in the issue that I point to here, issue 491 in CircuitPython.org, and somebody could paste it on the other side if you want. I talked about the idea of having bundles. You could have bundles. There's the master bundle, which has everything in it, but we also talked about having mini bundles for a particular project or for a particular board. And I'm just thinking, I'm wondering whether the whole idea of publishing a bundle, which we do like every other day, practically often or something, might be superseded just by get me the latest library stuff. It's sort of on the way to package management or something like that. But the whole idea is that there's one thing which has everything that's latest in it. That thing gets out of date really fast. So you could imagine, for instance, that instead of saying, download me the bundle, on CircuitPython.org/libraries, there's just a list of all the libraries. You can check off the ones you want to download and get a mini bundle, or you could check a box that says, give me everything, and it would give you the latest. And we'd stop having bundle releases. And I think that's something to think about. I don't think we don't have to decide anything here, but you can see whether you think about that. What do you think about that? About like even getting rid of the idea of a bundle, since the bundle is no longer useful as a thing. It's too big to put on any single board.
I mean, I liked it once. I think you or somebody else provided the example of like in Learn Guides, we can now just like give them a link to a thing that slurps the 3 libraries in and does dependency resolution and then spits out a zip. And I like that because like the thing with the bundle and the reason I like the bundle is like people understand what to do with zips, and like you're not really changing the way that people interact with it at all, except for the fact that you're only giving them the things they need. So I think it's a good idea.
All right. So I think I don't have time to work on this right now, but maybe it's a project in a month or 2 or something. Okay, I'll think about. Thank you.
I'm fully in support of this. The fact that we have to do separate library pages that get mirrored into 30 guides on certain boards is kind of absurd. It would be much easier to just include a link and be done with it. And then people aren't, because right now there's a screenshot of of the lib folder, and the person has to then make their lib folder look like this screenshot, and then every time we update a library or add something to that board, we have to go back and update that screenshot, or it's wrong. And it's just, I agree completely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That sounds good. And I think the whole idea, it's sort of like saying, well, there's a bundle. Not really sure in the long run whether it makes sense to have even the idea of a bundle. That's everything. All right. And so the last thing is kind of even more in the weeds, and is mostly for Scott, but it's just like in the process of doing this BLEIO HCI thing, Scott and I had talked about there are things right now. We divide up the hardware specific stuff into ports, which is based on chip families. And then even underneath that, we might have conditional compilation for different chips in the same family. And this HCI adapter thing for BLEIO is kind of almost the first case where things are divided up by the functionality of the device, but the device is not dependent on a particular port. So I made a new tree. This is sort of tentative. I made a new tree called CircuitPython devices instead of CircuitPython ports. And it has roughly the same structure, kind of in a mini way, of what the ports directory does. It has a common HAL because it's dependent on the device. It has some supervisor code that's specific to the device. But it isn't related to a particular chip family. So, and we talked about this in the past in terms of like the so-called IP that's used for peripherals in Tiny USB, where there are multiple manufacturers that use the same device. Mm-hmm. So it's just sort of, you can read about what I did here and you'll see it in the request. I don't know if there's anything to discuss here, but it's kind of something to think about. And the only other thing I can think of moving into this is generic touch IO right now.
Yeah, I mean the one question I have is I was picturing module name being the like the reverse. So module name first and then
I think that's a good idea. I think that would be an incompatible change, and I was doing something that was right now live in the current tree. So I could imagine doing what I did and then turning the whole thing upside down and slicing it by module name.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm picturing it as in like, if I'm looking at devices, I want to find all the devices that implement USB or SPI or BLEIO. So I'm just picturing module name before device name.
Yeah. So I think that's right. And I think I wouldn't do that now, but I would start with what I have, and then we could have a refactoring pull request later.
Because like you change make files too much then?
Yeah, it would change everything, and I really don't want. I don't want my pull request for HCI to be dependent on a make restructuring. So I would do that separately.
Okay.
But that's a very good idea. So that's a good point.
I mean, the one other reason I can think to do device name first is in case we had a device that provided more than one module, but I think it's okay if you had the device name replicated in multiple module name folders, if that were the case.
The way I did it right now, because common HAL is underneath the module name, as I have right now, it turns out that it's really easy to add file structure. It like just falls into place.
Well, common HAL usually isn't under module name, right? It's usually common HAL and then the module name.
This is a typo. I'm sorry. This is wrong. It is true that it's the other way.
Oh, okay, so it's last. Okay.
It's last. Yeah. It's common HAL device name. Yeah, I just was typing. This is like.
Okay.
You were correct.
That makes more sense to why you would want to start with it this way.
yeah. I'm sorry. Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of the modules being as high level as possible, because those are really the units that we're teaching people to separate functionality at.
Yeah.
So I think the higher up in the folder structure, the better.
Okay. All right. So I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
All right.
Dan. And pass it back to Kattni to wrap up.
Yeah, with that, we're going to wrap this up. We are coming up on the hour and a half mark, which is about where we usually are, so that's good. This has been the CircuitPython Weekly for June 29th, 2020. We are here typically every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Had to think about that, said it backwards. And Dan, you're not muted.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. If you would like to be notified of changes to the times or dates, you can ask to be added to the CircuitPythonistas role on Discord, which you can join at adafru.it/discord. And we will let you know if there are any changes. There is also a calendar available. And with that, thank you everyone who participated. Again, if you've made it this far and you would like to participate in the meeting but can't make it to the meeting, there's always a notes document where you can add notes and we can read your updates, even if you can't make it to the meeting. So once again, thank you everyone for participating, and we'll see you again next week.